Cowboys straight ahead with NFL Prime Monday. Mike Tirico, TJ, and Phil Sims standing by.
The Dallas Cowboys came up just short against Cleveland last week, and they come up just short in their quest to be home for the playoffs. Still a key stretch for Dallas. 2 games in 6 days, starting tonight against New Orleans, a game we preview on NFL Prime Monday.
There's not much talk about the New Orleans Saints making the playoffs this season. But if Jim Everett gets a win tonight, the Saints aren't as far away from a wild card as you might think. Tom?
Will the playoffs have 4 NFC Central teams or 3 from the NFC East? Will the New England Patriots be seeded number 2 in the AFC or left completely out? We'll connect the dots in the wide-open playoff picture coming up. Jaws?
I'll open the Prime Monday playbook and show you why that Dallas offense has been struggling a bit and what they'll have to do tonight to be successful against that Saints defense.
If Cleveland and Pittsburgh were the AFC's best yesterday, the league might want to book an NFC victory party for halftime of the Super Bowl. Tonight on Knights of the Round Table debate, who could possibly derail the NFC freight train? Pam?
I'm Pam Oliver at the Superdome, where these two teams, headed in apparently 2 different directions, have entirely different reasons to try to win. I'll explain coming up and have a conversation with Barry Switzer and Nate Newton.
Hi, I'm Chris Berman. Later on in our distant replay segment, we'll take a look at Archie Manning, the symbol of the New Orleans Saints, a classy and very good ball player who did everything he could to help New Orleans win. But unfortunately, it was just too big a bowl of gumbo to swallow.
Hi, downtown Julie Brown. He's not the new boy in town anymore. Barry Switzer, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Sounds real good.
I like it. Welcome to Dallas, Texas, and the 2-time Super Bowl champions, going for a 3rd. You want to play?
Soundtracks tonight. Saints center Jeff Ewing. When he's not fighting the pass rush, what does he talk about on the sidelines?
Who do you think has better cheerleaders, the Rams or the Raiders?
We've got no cheerleaders, but we do have the Cowboys, Saints, and much more coming up on NFL Prime Monday. From the Bud One airship, you're looking down on the Superdome in New Orleans, where the Super Bowl champion Cowboys take on the Saints. We'll get you ready for that. We'll talk a lot of football here on NFL Prime Monday. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Tirico. Joe Theismann on assignment. So Tom Jackson with us. And Tom, good to see that Phil Sims' wife, Diana, dressed him tonight. It's a nice outfit.
Good.
You look good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wouldn't pick that out.
I just want to know, Tom, have you ever seen my Super Bowl ring? I just want to show it to you.
You look mean.
I just had to.
That's the start.
90 minutes, you can't hit it once for that. The NFL regular season, guys, down to its final 15 games tonight in New Orleans. The Cowboys have nothing to play for in terms of the playoffs. The 6-8 Saints do. Still mathematically alive. The Saints are in the playoffs if they beat Dallas, win at Denver on Saturday, and if the Giants lose to Dallas, Green Bay lose at the streaking Bucks, the Cards lose to the Falcons. Chances are remote, but they are more than the chances of the 12 teams that are already eliminated. Pam Oliver is covering the game tonight from New Orleans. Pam.
Well, Mike, I guess technically you consider this a meaningless game for the Dallas Cowboys, but don't tell that to them. With Minnesota's loss to the Lions on Saturday, that secured a first-round bye for the Cowboys, which is the most they can hope for, of course.
For the last 4 spots, and simply stated, the NFC Central, except for Tampa, controls its own destiny. If Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, and Green Bay win their games, they are in the playoffs, irregardless of what everyone else does. These guys need some help. The Giants have to beat Dallas and have the Bucks beat the Packs. Arizona, the Cardinals, must win, have the Giants lose that game to Dallas, and get help from a couple of other places. And we detailed the Saints' winding road a few minutes ago. Fewer teams now left in the AFC pool. 4 teams are in: Steelers, Browns, Dolphins, and Chargers. 3 teams left. You see them on the left battling for 2 spots. New England, win and get in. The winner of the Raiders-Chiefs game on Sunday is in. Now, both L.A. and KC go to the playoffs if the Patriots lose and the Raiders lose. Go back to Ron Jaworski. The Chiefs, Ronnie, they get Montana back yesterday. They get the victory, and they're still alive. Where do you see Kansas City in this mix?
Well, Mike, you mentioned injuries, and they are so important. And early this season, when Montana was healthy, boy, they were playing terrific. Joe gets banged up. They lose Neil Smith for a while. Their defense starts to sag. If they get Montana healthy, which he is now, if Neil Smith can get healthy, they can find a way to win out there at the Raiders. This team could threaten for the Super Bowl. The Chiefs have the talent.
Well, Ron, anybody can win the Super Bowl in the AFC right now. And I tell you what, as a fan, as a sports commentator, I find this all exciting that all these teams are bunched in there together. And I'll tell you why they're bunched in there together. It's the players and coaches in the NFL have gotten better, so it's hard to go out there and dominate a team or other teams week in and week out. A great case in point, the Miami Dolphins are playing the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts have nothing to play for. Miami's a playoff team. The Colts play maybe their best game of the year. And, TJ, I think it's great.
I cannot believe you are so excited about mediocrity. As you watch the course of the season, certainly fans are going to be excited about their team still being in the playoff picture at the end of the year. But I'm looking for quality football over the 16-week schedule, looking for more quality teams. Not 3 teams that are going to dominate the other 25, but, Mike, is it too much to ask for 10 solid, fundamentally sound teams in the NFL?
You got 12 playoff spots, so 10? You're asking for a lot.
Minus 2.
That's right. You got the extra wild card around. You're asking for a lot. A little bit later, Phil, TJ, and Jaws look at the weekend's action, including the Patriots' defense. Our roundtables still have their thoughts on who may replace the Bills as the AFC rep in the Super Bowl. We're going to speak with defense, starting the rebuilding process. Ron shows us how they match up tonight with Dallas. That's as Prime Monday continues, getting you ready for the Saints and the Cowboys.
Prime Monday is brought to you by Isuzu, makers of incredible four-wheel drive, and by Delta Airlines. You'll love the way we fly.
Good to have the Duke with us. If the Saints allow 46 points in their last 2 games, it will be a record for points allowed by a New Orleans defense in one season. Look at the numbers. Last 30 games, they've allowed more points than in the prior 48 games. Talk about a defense that needs to rebuild. New Orleans faces the nightmare tonight of how to slow down the arsenal of the Dallas offense. A task similar to the one they faced 3 weeks ago tonight against the equally dangerous 49ers. Ron Jaworski opens the playbook to look at how the Saints handle the Niners. Ron?
Thanks, Mike. You know, the Saints defense ranked 26th in the National Football League. And it really surprised me because in my film study of this defense, it is a solid defensive scheme.
When the 49ers were in their base offensive formation, 2 backs, 2 wide receivers, and the tight end position on the line of scrimmage, the Saints defense did a very solid job of matching up. Here's how they played it. First, you need to know that Jerry Rice is split right on the top of the screen, and that John Taylor is split left on the bottom. Head up on Rice is corner Jimmy Spencer. Of course, no one corner can handle Rice in man coverage. So what the Saints do at the snap is double Jerry with the strong safety, Sean Lumpkin. Watch this part of the coverage scheme. Now take it back to the snap. This time, let's focus on how the Saints match up against the tight end, Brent Jones. Middle linebacker Sam Mills will run with Jones down the seam. Sure, that's a mismatch, but Mills will have help behind him from the free safety, Vince Buck, who will slide into the middle. Watch this part of the coverage. Again, back to the snap. The Saints will match up man-to-man with backs Ricky Waters and William Floyd with linebacker James Williams and nickelback Tyrone Hughes. What that does is leave their best man-to-man coverage corner, Vinnie Clark, matched in single coverage on the outside against John Taylor. Watch Clark work at the bottom of the screen. He will force Taylor to the inside where he knows he has help from his free safety Buck. Taylor's route on this play is a sideline out. And Steve Young, reading the single coverage, is looking to get the ball to him. But Clark's aggressive coverage destroys the timing of the route. And Steve, as you will see, will have nowhere to go with the football. From a tactical standpoint, this is an excellent approach for the Saints. Rely on their 4-down linemen to pressure the quarterback with a coverage scheme designed to take best advantage of the abilities of your personnel.
What hurts that Saints defense is an offensive scheme that is flexible, that can come in with 3 wide and 4 wide receivers to create the...
This week's news from the NFL starts on a few sad notes. Phil Bengtson died today. The man who replaced Vince Lombardi as coach of the Green Bay Packers was 81. Bengtson was the architect of the great Packer defenses of the 60s. He took over as head coach from Lombardi when Lombardi retired. 1968 to 70 were the years that Bengtson coached. And the patriarch of the DeBartolo family, Edward DeBartolo Sr., died today. The son of the man who currently runs the 49ers was 85. DeBartolo Sr. died after complications from pneumonia. With Jimmy Johnson deciding to stay in television, there are more questions on movement along the coaching front in this offseason. What's up in Seattle after a heartbreaking loss to the Raiders last night on ESPN? Our colleague John Clayton reporting in today's Tacoma News Tribune that Flores will not return as Seahawks coach next year. Flores' contract, believed to be 5 years, in fact gives Seattle an option out after this 3rd season. Today at his press conference, Flores said he doesn't know where the rumors are starting from, but Clayton also reports that the owner, Ken Behring, has met with Bill Walsh, considering Walsh for a high-level position in the Hawks organization. On the injury front, for Monday's big game in Minnesota, Warren Moon's status still uncertain. Moon hurt here on the tail end of this play in the loss on Saturday to the Lions. He's going to test his knee at practice on Thursday. Sean Salisbury, Brad Johnson, the backups. Johnson listed as number 2. Both worked in practice today. Also among the injured, Arizona quarterback Jay Strader, medial collateral knee sprain holds him out of practice, but he should be okay. Jeff George expected to start Saturday despite a broken little finger on his left hand. And Eagle rookie Charlie Garner had his ruptured patella tendon operated on today. All quiet on the Ram move front, but Baltimore Oriole baseball owner Peter Angelos and Bucks officials are close to striking a deal to move the team to Baltimore. One of the team trustees in Tampa, Stephen Story, said today the meetings are beyond preliminary and, quote, some more in-depth discussions could consummate a deal. Meantime, Bucks talking about moving, but they're also going for a 5th straight win. They could go out in grand style in Tampa, avoiding a 12th double-digit loss season if they beat Green Bay. Well, today, at least 5,000 tickets were sold for Saturday's game with the Pack. Hats off to the Oilers for avoiding Babygate 2. They chartered a plane so DB Chris Dishman could be there for his child's birth early Sunday morning, then get Dishman back for the game yesterday against the Chiefs. Owner Bud Adams going the extra mile as well, with 74 hand-rolled Cuban cigars for the Oilers staff and players to celebrate the birth. No victory cigars for the Oilers in the AFC mix last year. Not this. Same with the Bills. So who's left? Who are the contenders? Who's going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl? To talk about that, our Knights of the Round Table, Skip Bayless from the Insider in Dallas, Mike Wilbon from the Washington Post, and from the Detroit Free Press, Mitch Albert.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Well, you all saw yesterday the AFC Super Bowl, so to speak, Pittsburgh against Cleveland. So after watching that, what do you think of the conference's chances in the real Super Bowl come the end of January?
Well, if Pittsburgh can get back to that point, and you just don't know what the AFC right now, I think Pittsburgh has got enough sort of NFC things, defense, running game, and most importantly, for the first time since the early 80s Raiders, you've got an intimidating presence in the AFC.
I'm sorry, Michael. All I saw yesterday were 2 of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen in a big game.
It's cold.
Yeah, I got to agree with him. And Vinny Testaverde throwing the float ball up there and then having 4 chances within the 5-yard line, can't get in. I'm sorry, and I don't mean this meanly, it's going to sound it, but Vinny Testaverde and the word Super Bowl should not be used in the same sentence right now.
Mitch, let's just go ahead and say it. Vinny Testaverde, I think, was better in college than he is right now. Hey, incredibly, Cleveland picked up all those crazy Pittsburgh blitzes yesterday, and Vinny still couldn't find anybody.
And I know defense wins championships, at least that's the cliche, but I don't think they got enough on those teams to win a Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, let's not get too carried away with this whole thing about Steelers and defense. Like, I think Terry Bradshaw, who I really like, has recently talking about comparing this team with his steel curtain defensive teams. I don't think you should put this team at all in the same breath with Green, Holmes, Mad Dog White, Ham, Lambert, Blunt. This is just no way.
No, this is no steel curtain. This is a smallish defense, Michael, that's been tricking people all year. I think people can figure it out. I think it can be had in the playoffs.
Well, as long as we're dissing the 2 best teams there, I think this might be like 1985 when New England comes out of the back of the pack and gets to the Super Bowl. I mean, why not? They're playing well. They got a good quarterback. Their defense is playing well. Their secondary. They could be there at the end of January.
Anybody could be there at the end of January with the AFC. There's no back of the pack. There's no sense in talking about seedings and home field and first, second, third in the playoffs, wild card. Any of these teams could get there. Every game is a pick 'em. I don't want to hear the word upset at the end of any game in the AFC
Michael,
playoffs.
my money in the AFC playoffs will be on the hot quarterback, the best quarterback. Drew Bledsoe could win at Pittsburgh. You don't think Dan Marino? He definitely could win at Pittsburgh. I don't think it's time yet to write off Joe Montana. He won at Houston in the playoffs last year. I think he might live here.
Well, there is one team we can actually write off tonight. It's time to play taps for the Buffalo Bills.
And you've been playing taps for him for about 3 years, I think.
Well, I was just a little premature, but now they're actually buried, so eulogy time. Where did the Buffalo Bills, this group, stand in history?
When we look back on the Bills, I think we'll all realize just how bad the AFC was for 4 years.
Remind me not to have you at my funeral.
I've been at your funeral a few times.
Listen, I mean, I think this is the greatest team ever not to win a Super Bowl. I think that's the only way to remember this team, and I think over time, that's what's going to happen. They're going to be rehabilitated in history, sort of like Richard Nixon in a short period of time.
The only similarity between that team and Richard Nixon is that at one point they both got down on their knees and wept, okay? And that's it. This was a team that was supposed to win a lot of Super Bowls and didn't. And America, unfortunately, this is a national character, just remembers if you won or lost, they're going to remember that they lost when they should have won.
But, Mitch, America finally really embraced this team as lovable losers. At least they did have the character to keep bouncing back from all that misery.
Lovable? You show me one football player that likes to be called lovable, okay? He wants either to be called a winner or he wants to be called a tough loser. He doesn't want to be called lovable.
I'll tell you something else they wouldn't be buying, Carl, and that's worthy of our admiration, which the Buffalo Bills, regardless of what anybody says, has become a team that is worthy of our admiration. They're going to have a bunch of players go to the Hall of Fame. Kelly, Bruce Smith, Thurman Thomas, Talley, Reed, probably Cornelius Bennett, and the coach of that team, Marv Lee.
So if they got all those great players and the coaches, they're all going to the Hall of Fame, why couldn't they win one Super Bowl?
2 words, wide left.
Wide left. All right. When we come back, can the Dallas Cowboys turn it on like a faucet? We'll tap into that idea when we return with the other roundtable, Mike.
Okay, guys, with Buffalo and Houston now, Kansas City needs to win, and if they do and get to the playoffs, they'll have the longest streak of consecutive years to the playoffs at 5. Dallas will be there a 4th straight year this year. We go back to the Dallas-New Orleans game in a little bit. ABC's Dan Deerdorf talking about the Cowboys' approach to tonight's game. And later, downtown Julie Brown gets a tour of the Cowboy complex from the man who's taken over Jimmy's job.
I hope this wasn't a present from the last coach.
No, yeah, Jimmy didn't like this.
Corbel, for people who know champagne.
Walter Payton puts it on pasta. Payne Stewart, blackened salmon. Dan Marino, wings. So what do you put it on? Tabasco. Wrangler jeans. Available in the 2 colors boys prefer most. Black and blue. Wrangler. Real, comfortable jeans. Pine Lake. 3 friends. 3 pair of Wrangler jeans. Everybody's comfortable. Even the fish. Wrangler. Real, comfortable jeans.
Hey, Tom, what does this watch stand for anyway?
It stands for Sunday Night Football on ESPN.
Oh, it's watch. Because I thought, see, I thought the W, if you switch around a couple of letters, and it works right out.
Join the Watch program. We encourage everyone to watch.
I had it crooked, I think.
As we enter the final week of the season, here are some of the milestones in sight. Barry Sanders, 169 yards shy of 2,000. He plays, of course, at Miami. Tonight, Emmett looks to move closer to John Riggins' NFL touchdown record, and Drew Bledsoe, a shot at the single-season attempt and completion record. Mentioned Emmett. Let's turn to Dan Deerdorf of ABC's Monday Night Football crew. Dan, it looks like Emmett won't win the rushing title. Here's a guy who likes to be driven by some of those individual records. Do you think something like the touchdown record of John Riggins still drives Emmett's motor?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it does drive his motor, and I think that for as much as he says that he really wasn't pursuing Barry Sanders, he really was. Emmitt Smith is proud of the fact that he's won those multiple titles, and he's sorry to see it go. And Riggins' 24 touchdowns is well within his reach, and yes, I think it's something that makes him purr a little bit.
How important these 6 days for Dallas, since they can't improve their playoff standing at all?
Well, I think it's very important for them, and Barry Switzer has made no attempt to hide it, that he does not want to enter the playoffs with them struggling. and they did not play well against Cleveland. Losing the game was inconsequential to the fact that they just didn't play well, and he didn't think either offensively or defensively. And every coach wants to enter the playoffs on a roll, and the Cowboys going into tonight's game are not on a roll.
And you saw New Orleans 3 weeks ago, and I think the people get another chance tonight to see one of the best young offensive linemen in the league. As a former offensive lineman, how do you see Willie Roaf, the Pro Bowler for the Saints?
Well, you know, I just look back to when I broke in the league and how difficult it is to make that kind of an impact in just your second year. And we saw him early last year in his rookie season, and it has been a long, long time since I saw someone that good, that young. Richmond Webb at Miami had a comparable rookie year, but I think that Roaf is more physical than Webb and able to more dominate the running game at the line of scrimmage.
Dan, we wish you all a Merry Christmas. We'll see you, Al, Frank, and Lynn at the top of the hour.
Thank you, Mike. Merry Christmas, everybody back there.
They say thanks. Those guys, as a matter of fact, Phil, TJ, Jaws, rejoin me in a minute and a half. Talk about the Pats and how the turnovers are making up for other defensive problems.
How much longer can he last on that back?
As big as the personality of this guy back here is, it doesn't matter. Jimmy, the shadow of Jimmy is always lurking around him, at least for this season.
Well, this is basically still Jimmy Johnson's football team, and I don't think the Cowboys have proven that they can win a big game for Barry Switzer. I give you the San Francisco 49ers and the Cleveland Browns. So even though these last two games don't mean anything record-wise or how the Cowboys will approach the playoffs, it's important that this team prove they're willing to get up for a big game for their coach.
Well, Tom, I don't think this is Jimmy Johnson's football team because it changed. And one thing to change it is called salary cap. The Cowboys, they lost some players because of the salary cap. The 49ers took advantage of it. They added quite a few players. They really closed that gap. Maybe they even went ahead of the Dallas Cowboys. If this salary cap wasn't there this year, the Cowboys would still be super favorites to go to the Super Bowl and win it again, Ron.
Yeah. There's an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Barry Switzer has come in with his football team and basically replaced Jimmy Johnson. And who cares whose team it is? It is now Barry Switzer's team because he's the man in charge. But he has kind of taken over as an executive head coach. In other words, he lets his assistant coaches do the job. Joe Avazano would...
Atop the NFC Central, the Detroit Lions, a struggling team with Scott Mitchell at the helm. But since Dave Craig has come on, he's thrown more touchdowns and far fewer interceptions. And the man getting a lot of credit for the Lion turnaround, Dave Craig, joins us now from Michigan. Dave, how much of what you've been able to do successfully at the quarterback spot is a product of you being a veteran compared to Scott Mitchell being a little bit newer at this than you are?
Well, probably that has a little bit to do with it, but I think the other thing is we're just executing as a team, and maybe I was just fortunate enough to get here when this team was starting to click and get things going together, and I think we've utilized Barry Sanders to the utmost. I think he's having, no doubt about it, an MVP season, and we're just going along with him.
You're in your hunting thread, so we can talk about decoys. Barry Sanders as a decoy sounds like a strange idea, but are in fact the Lions running more play action using Barry as a threat instead of just as a weapon?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I would never call Barry Sanders a decoy. I think the defense, when they're out there, they're always paying attention to him. But we can utilize him as far as faking the ball to him or just the threat of having him in the backfield. That keeps linebackers and secondary safeties. They have to be conscious of him all the time. That might give our receivers an extra step to get downfield.
Hey, if this all works out, this would be a third different playoff team for you, Seattle. People may not remember you played in the AFC title game with Kansas City last year. Detroit, if you guys get in this year. Is this one a little more satisfying if you're able to make the playoffs? Because even though you don't want to admit it and take the credit, you're really the big difference in this team the last half of the season.
Well, I think the thing that I would take the most pride in is, just like you said, it's be a third different team that I've been able to be on that has made it into the playoffs. And there's a lot of neat things about this team. I just like the way we've, you know, kind of accepted each other with the salary cap thing and free agency. A lot of different guys mixing together, and I think we've come together lately the last 5, 6 weeks, 7 weeks of the season. And I feel very good about this football team. We're very confident. We feel good about each other, and it's just a really good situation to be in, and I'm very happy to be a part of it.
The Super Bowl's in Miami, but the Super Bowl for the Lions is Christmas night in Miami. I'm sure you got a chance to see a couple of weeks ago, Buffalo passed for a lot of yards on Miami. Is that a thought that immediately enters your mind when you see Miami? Hey, here's a team that other people have had success throwing the ball on?
Well, you know, you look at things like that, but, you know, you still have to be conscious of the fact that any time they can come up and do something against you that can stop you. And I think, like I said before, with our offense, I think the main thing that most people are doing is trying to stop Barry. And And if they concentrate on that, then yes, then we might have a good chance to throw the football on them. On the other hand, you worry about a guy like Dan Marino. I mean, he's a very competitive person. I know him, and he knows where the Super Bowl is going to be held this year, too, and I'm sure he wants to get there as badly as I do.
Dave, happy holidays. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Dave Craig, who joined us before he went out hunting today in Michigan.
Jacket.
Yeah,
I like it.
You like that jacket?
I like it. Wear it next week.
I don't think so. You know, when you talk about Dave Craig, you've always heard the phrase NFL all-time leading fumbler. But in the last 6 games, Craig and the Lions have only turned it over twice, Thomas.
Well, I have to eat my words. I was one of those guys who said that Dave Craig was prone a couple of times a game to put the football on the ground and allow the other team a chance to win. He's no longer doing that. I think he's matured as a quarterback. And he's smart enough to understand what a quarterback ought to be able to do with Barry Sanders standing behind you in the backfield.
Yeah, and Barry Sanders doesn't help, but you said a good word, matured. And that's the difference between Dave Craig and Scott Mitchell. Dave Craig has all this experience behind him. Remember, he's thrown for over 30,000 yards. So you take a quarterback with all this experience, surrounded by the talent, Barry Sanders, Herman Moore, Brett Perryman, and that's always going to translate into good quarterbacking and good play, Jaws.
You know, Phil, the word I use is unselfish. David Craig is the kind of guy that it doesn't matter to him what his numbers are, what his stats are. The only thing that's important to him is winning. And there are times in my study of David dropping back, a lineman will miss his block completely. He'll get rid of the football. I know when that lineman comes back to the huddle, he'll say, hey, thanks, Dave, I owe you one. That's the kind of player he is. But the one thing that I think he brings to their offense is his ability to read defense. And earlier this year, I did one of my playbooks on what I thought were some of the Detroit line receivers dogging it, running their routes if they were not the primary receiver. With David Craig as quarterback, every receiver is now a primary receiver. Mike?
You know, if Craig and the Lions get to the playoffs, maybe Dave will get his just due for his rewards. There are a couple of quarterbacks this year, Phil, that really didn't, I think, and I know you share some of the same opinions, didn't get their just due in terms of the Pro Bowl.
Well, we get to sit up here every week, me and Tom, and we make our evaluations. And there's 3 quarterbacks who I think really got short-sighted this year. One is Brett Favre, who I thought had an outstanding year. Another guy we're going to see tonight, Jim Everett, turned his career around. I think maybe had the best year of his whole career down in New Orleans. And also another guy that a lot of people can't believe is Jim Kelly. I think he played his best year of quarterbacking, leading, playing with toughness. A lot of coaches around the league think so, and Jim Kelly also said it might have been his best year, too.
You talk about Favre. TD to INT ratio better than 2-to-1 this year has really turned that number around. Oh, Dave Craig, we were talking about him. Craig, the rest of the NFC holding hopes of dethroning Dallas. Our roundtable will discuss how important is this 6-day stretch for the Cowboys. In a little bit, we'll listen in on the field with Saints center Jeff Ulaney. What do offensive linemen say during the game?
What do you think else, buddy?
Weekly, part 2. Well, what do you have to do this week? A lot of Christmas shopping, I bet, some last-minute details to take care of. The Cowboys, do they have some business to take care of this week? Back to the roundtable, back to me.
Yeah, I'd say their list is full. They got 2 games in 6 days on the road. Seems like they need some of that old Dallas magic now. Will they turn it on? Can they turn it on?
Mitch, the Cowboys have been saying all week their season starts tonight. They know, and by the way, we'll see if it starts tonight, but they know that all year they've been turning it on, turning it off. I talked to their defensive coordinator this week, Butch Davis. He said if we blow these last 2 games to give us 3 straight losses going into the playoffs, you can stick a fork in us.
I don't think that's an exaggeration at all either, Skip, because usually this time of year you'll see a couple of leading teams sort of goof around, rest some people, try some new things. But I think the Niners and Cowboys are sort of both looking at each other through the bushes. I think if Dallas slides, the next couple of weeks you could see not only a loss to San Francisco, but a loss in the first round.
Well, I don't think it's just the players here either. I think this is the time Barry Switzer has to earn his money. You know, the first months are a whole different part of the season. This is the time where you got to sort of pluck that emotional pitchfork. And I got to wonder if they stumble in these next couple of weeks, if some of the Dallas players won't allow that nagging thought in the back of their head, this isn't the same head coach that we had last year.
Now, Mitch, so far, this team has really appreciated that Barry Switzer has been the un-Jimmy, the guy with the small ego, the guy who's let them play on an even keel
and that's
all
fine
year.
for the first 14 weeks of the season. You need the Jimmy now. Right. You need a guy who's going to make you more confident, and they got to look up in that spot and see a guy who can help them win games, not just be a nice guy.
What I want to know is, has he made a difference so far this season? Has he done something like Walsh or Parcells or Gibbs, adjustments, personnel, crisis management? Has there been that already?
Well, wait. I mean, let's not diss the guy unfairly. He's actually won more games than they had at this time last year, and they've scored more points.
And
than
by
they had
the way,
this time last
Michael, he did make one key big-picture decision on Thanksgiving Day against Green Bay. all the assistant coaches came to Switzer at halftime and said, we got to go with Rodney Peete. And he said, no, we're sticking with Jason Garrett. And by the way, I think that was a pretty good move. And speaking of quarterbacks, Barry Switzer has not had the benefit that Jimmy Johnson did last year of a great Troy Aikman. By Troy standards, he has really had an off year so far.
Okay, the thing we know about, the two things we know about in this whole league and this whole season are Dallas and San Francisco. But 4 of the NFC playoff teams of 6 could be coming from the NFC Central. Now, does this suggest this is the best division in the NFL, or is it the most mediocre?
I think it's the deepest division in football right now, but it remains now the appetizer before the real main course, which, of course, will be San Francisco and Dallas.
Well, far be it from me not to credit the NFC Central, but I think if we're talking about best divisions in football, you should at least look over in the AFC to the AFC West. Now, you've got San Diego there, good team. Yeah, you've got the Los Angeles Raiders, everyone's always afraid of. Kansas City with Joe Montana. Denver just got knocked out of the playoffs. Now, granted, they're in a genetically inferior environment, and it's a bad neighborhood because it's the AFC, but one of those teams probably has a better chance of getting to a Super Bowl than NFC Central.
Wait a second. You, of all homers, talking about the AFC West? What about your Detroit Lions? My goodness, they are playing so well right now. I think they're the 3rd best team in football.
Stop it.
Why?
Detroit, the 3rd best team in football. Detroit's the tease team, the Seattle Supersonics of the NFL. Every year we go through this with Detroit, I'm not giving them any benefit of the doubt at this stage. Why would you? How can you call Detroit the 3rd best team?
I'll tell you exactly how it's become the primetime team of the NFL. If it's Monday night, Thursday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, every time it's the national TV platform, Barry Sanders elevates his game and this team up to a very high level.
And then they go back and they lose to Tampa Bay somewhere 2 weeks later on a quiet Sunday afternoon.
I can't tell you how much I enjoy watching you two debate the
They're
Detroit Lions.
They're going to get smoked against Miami on Christmas.
Yeah, but
they do have this little fella named Barry Sanders back there.
Didn't they happen to win at Dallas on a Monday night? How about that?
Besides, let's keep in mind that whoever gets out of that little mess in the NFC Central is going to have to play Dallas or San Francisco. It's going to be a defensive thing. I think Green Bay and Chicago may have some chances with their defense best to get that job done. We'll see. These guys have been in Detroit. I just had to sit here. I just had to sit here.
Put up or shut up.
Back to you, Mike.
Guys, we'll check out your new ties on the night after Christmas. Back to the Dome in a bit. Pam Oliver talking with the whole kitchen. Nate Newton in the house. Next, we go on the field. The man who starts the Saints offense, Jeff Ulenake, takes us to the trenches.
Man, you guys can mic me anytime. Working good.
Put a mic on Jeff Ulenake anytime that the Saints come up with a victory. They beat the Rams. That was back on December 4th, 31-15. The old Ohio State Buckeye getting ready to face the Cowboys. Before you ask, Irvin getting ready to take on the New Orleans secondary. Michael, 71 receptions, over 1,000 yards. First Cowboy with 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. A private moment as he gets ready for the game. The Dallas offensive line has done a good job again this year, allowing just 17 sacks. That's 3rd fewest among NFL teams, despite the free agency losses, which hurt the depth and the injury to Eric Williams. Earlier at the Dome, Pam Oliver spoke with one of those offensive linemen.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mike. To think that the Cowboys are playing for nothing, I think is ridiculous. Look at the game face on this guy. Nate, tell me about you guys preparing for this game where people technically say it's meaningless for you.
It means a lot to us. We need to go out and we need to play well. We need to execute. We need to dominate some people. San Francisco, like they're running away from this thing, and we need to catch up, and we need to start tonight. I mean, if you don't go into the playoffs with a roll, you may lose in the first round.
You guys sort of second-guessing yourselves? Is that what I hear?
No, I'm not second-guessing myself. I'm trying to get my teammates ready to play. We need this victory. We need to look good. You know, let every people around the league know that we can play ball.
I was just talking to Coach a little while ago, and he talked about the intensity of practice and how he just described it as an excellent practice. Tell me about just getting the bad taste out of your mouth following the Cleveland loss.
Well, you know, we went in the locker room. We felt kind of bad. Everybody was down, and we need to get back to the basics. We're a team that usually work all the way through into the Super Bowl. It look like this year here, that's going to be taken away from us if we don't pick it up. So we went into practice with an intense look. You know, we had a few fights, but we just trying to get it right.
Do you guys understand that, you know, you can't sort of slack your way into this? You got to have to earn it, even as the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions. Is that a lesson they still need to learn?
Yeah, we got some young guys. We got some guys that's new to our team. And, I mean, I tell you what, some guys used to going home and, you know, spending time with their people in the 1st of January. We spend time on the bye week. And other than that, we ready to play ball. But I don't want to go home early. I don't want Christmas to be, you know, because somebody knocked me out of the playoffs. I want Christmas to be joyous. Somebody knocked me out of the playoffs, then my kids and wife won't have a good time because I won't even come home.
We can't have that. Thank you for stopping by.
All right.
Appreciate your time. All right, let's go back to Mike.
And you want Nate happy. You can tell that, guys, right? Ron Jaworski, you know, oftentimes there's a game where a defense is exposed. And let's go to the Cincinnati game. Jeff Blake threw some deep passes in that game. That was right after the Arizona game when Troy Aikman got hurt. And I know the offense has been putting up points, but you know what? Since then, the defense and the offense don't seem the same.
Yeah. Mike, I really believe that the offense of the Cowboys fuels their defense. And when their offense is in sync, they're scoring points early and getting a lead quick and putting that defense in a known situation. Now the Dallas defense can attack the quarterback and not have to worry about the run. Now when they have their problems is when teams play physical against them, when they're in the unknown situation, when the team can run and pass. And I think that's because they're light in the seat. And a good example of that might be Charles Haley at 255 tonight is going to go up against William Rowe. They're not physically a good team. They're built on quickness and speed, and when they have to play smash mouth on defense, they have trouble. Bill?
Well, you're right, Charles, but the good news is tonight they're playing a New Orleans team that is not that physical. They like to throw the football, and Jim Everett likes the matchups he has with his wide receivers against the shorter Dallas corners. And I kind of find this ironic because everybody around the league is always complaining how the Cowboys' big receivers, Harper and Irvin, are always pushing off the small defensive backs.
Yeah, it's a team game, but it's made up of individual matchups. We're going to see one of the best in the league this year. As you heard Jaws mention, it's William Rolfe and Charles Haley. And what separates William Rolfe, when we take a look at Mr. Rolfe right there, from the rest of the offensive tackles in this league is his nastiness at the line of scrimmage. He puts on those glasses when he gets on the sideline. He looks like a professor. But on the line of scrimmage, he has an attitude that's much more defensive than offensive.
A couple of Pro Bowlers. Keep your eye on that matchup tonight when the Saints have the ball on offense. A little bit later, Chris Berman will take us on tonight's distant replay. When you think of Saints, you think two things. Bad teams, good quarterback early. We'll look at Archie Maddox. Next, the playbook. The Cowboy offense predictable? Does it matter because they're so darn good? Well, Jaws will open up the playbook. You'll be interested in seeing what he has to say when we come back. A pretty good year. Jim Everett rated 5th in the NFC after 14 games, 19 touchdowns, throwing for 3,350 yards. Didn't have all that bad a game against the Niners 3 weeks ago on a Monday night. The Dallas Cowboys have had a dominant run over the last 3 years. Monday night's a little different story. Just 4-4 in the stretch that includes this 94 season as well. Cowboy offense, folks, it's just a machine. 8 of the starters selected to the Pro Bowl as starters or alternates. As the offense continues to churn towards a 3rd NFL title, are they becoming set in their ways, and does it matter? Ron Jaworski answers those questions as he reopens the playbook.
Mike, the Cowboys' approach to offense is very basic. They try to beat you with execution rather than by design.
Here you see Dallas in what we call the weak eye. The tight end, Jay Novacek, is positioned on the right, so that's the strong side of the formation. But look at the fullback, Darrell Johnston. Instead of being directly in front of Emmitt Smith in the traditional eye, he's on the other side of the tight end, the weak side of the formation. His positioning is why it's called the weak eye. This is a predominant weak side running formation for the Cowboys, with Johnston the lead blocker for Emmitt. When the Cowboys do throw on first down out of this formation, they throw a high percentage of the time to the weak side. And the weak side wideout is almost always Michael Irvin. The Dallas offense is very basic. There's not a lot of formation variation, and there's not a lot of pre-snap motion. Watch the Browns' weak safety, Stephon Moore. He will attack at the snap. This comes from film study. He's reacting to the formation. He'll support against the Smith weak side run. And he'll be in position to take away the weak side passing game to Irvin, one of the Cowboys' most successful plays. Now let's watch this play begin. It will be a first down pass. Look at where Moore is now positioned. Irvin basically runs 3 routes. The short post at about 19 yards, the inside curl at about 12 yards, and the sideline out at about 12 yards. Here it will be the sideline out. Here, Troy Aikman, with the timing that separates him from almost all NFL quarterbacks, is ready to deliver to Irvin before Michael makes his outside break. But Moore's positioning has taken away the sideline out, and Troy will get sacked. Yes, the Cowboys have great talent, but have their offensive tendencies become too easy to read?
Yes, they have. And the play I just showed you was not an isolated incident in that Cleveland-Dallas game. As I broke the game down, I noticed how often the Browns' front was in the right position, their coverage was in the right position, and their stunts were going to the right position. And I really believe that if the Cowboys are going to be successful in the playoffs and successful tonight, they're going to have to break their stereotypes, Tom.
Ron, from a defensive perspective, the Saints linebackers have to make the proper read on run and pass, and that means reading the guards. If it's a pass, they have to read that pass coverage, get to that 15 yards, and give those underneath coverage, give the underneath coverage help to the DBs.
Yeah, they need that. They're going to need that tonight. I tell you, a lot of people think Troy Aikman struggled last week against the Cleveland Browns, and he did somewhat because he'd been off a couple weeks. But his main problem is the turf was very wet down in Dallas Stadium, so every time he got that ball, he couldn't get the grip on it, and that's why he was overthrowing receivers. Tonight, it won't be wet in that dome. A weak secondary for the Saints. I look for Troy Aikman to have a good night and be very sharp.
You don't think it was just rusty last week? You think the wet ball contributed to that?
I know the wet ball contributed to it because I heard it.
As most of you know, Jim Moore, age 59, the most successful coach in Saints history with a winning record. Hoping to improve on that and upset the Cowboys tonight. Time now for Distant Replay. Here's Chris Berman.
All right, Michael, thank you. Monday night on the Bayou. Every night's a fun night in New Orleans, isn't it? Of course, I've just heard that. It's fun for everybody there except the New Orleans Saints. Way back when, we got an inkling that Monday night might not be the best evening for the Saints to come out and play. They were home in 1979 against the then Oakland Raiders. They built up a seemingly insurmountable lead. But just as the Raiders are the kings of Monday Night Football, this game cemented the fact that the Saints were not. Monday night Mardi Gras in the Superdome, and the Saints had a party in the first half. They kept marching into the end zone. Archie Manning to Tony Galbraith, one of 4 touchdowns in the second quarter to put the Saints up 28-14 at the half. Kenny Stabler was having a horrible night. His wobbler picked off by Saints linebacker Ken Bordelon, who takes it 19 yards for the touchdown. 35-14 Saints, and the game looked over, except to John Facenda.
What remained was totally incredible, except to Raider fans who know that commitment to excellence keys the silver and black.
Kenny Stabler must have heard that voice of John Facenda, and in the fourth quarter, the snake shed his skin once again. He finds Cliff Branch, who leaves 2 Saints hanging and sprints 66 yards for the touchdown. The Raiders scored 4 touchdowns on their last 6 possessions, including Stabler to Branch again with 1:54 to go. To give the Raiders the 42-35 win. And the Superdome was deflated with another New Orleans nightmare. Just another night at the office for Archie Manning. 35 points, and it wasn't good enough. The year before, in 1978, Manning was the player of the year in the NFL. His Saints were 7-9. Archie, though, remained a hometown hero, as he was coming down the pike from Ole Miss in 1971, a short ride. 1971, the year of the quarterback. Jim Plunkett, the first overall draft pick by New England. Manning by the Saints, picked second. Dan Pastorini picked third by the Houston Oilers. And if you think about it, none of those 3 players really disappointed. Certainly Archie did not. He remains a hero in New Orleans. And tonight, he's the subject of our Distant Replay.
I can remember Archie Manning walking into camp like it was yesterday. Country boy from Drew, Mississippi. Just unassuming type of a guy. As soon as they got him in there, they made him stand up in the parking lot on a car and start singing and you know, being nervous. His voice starts crackling.
I'm not a good singer, but I sang loud. I was humble. I tried to get to know people. I tried to work.
The guy that they brought in to be like the savior of the team, pretty heavy load to put on a young guy.
And the load only got heavier when, in his debut, Manning led the Saints to a win over the Rams. But it wasn't just the victory that canonized St. Archie. It was the miraculous way in which it was achieved.
3 seconds left, and we got a timeout. So we come over to the sideline, and I said, "Now what we're going to do?" And about this time, the official comes over and said, "Time to go." So I head back out on the field,
And when I get in the huddle, and Abramowitz, as always, he wanted to throw to him, as always. And he said, what are we going to do? I said, they never said. So coming from college, I called the run-pass option. And fortunately, got in the end zone.
And it was a question. The Rams didn't think Archie got in. But it was a close play. That was kind of a milestone game because he was Archie with all the fanfare. And when Archie signed, Johnny Vaught, his coach at Ole Miss, said that he would revolutionize professional football.
It might have been the worst thing ever happened because now, here we go. We're going all the way now. Archie's going to take us.
To take advantage of Manning's running ability, the Saints even employed the option play, a college football tactic that not only didn't bring many victories, it almost cost Manning his head.
He spent a lot of Sundays looking up at the sky above Tulane Stadium. He could, he had trouble getting up sometimes. He got sandwiched lots of times, and his protection broke down, and it got to the point where they didn't have to play the Saints for the run. They just sent guys in after him. And Archie, he took some shots all right.
He got beat up. He was thrown around. I mean, he took more abuse than probably, or as much abuse as any quarterback in the National Football League, and it was tough. Those big linemen get very aggravated when they have to run long distances. They like to punish people that make them run long distances. So he took a hell of a beating. Willie Lanier, who really wasn't an outspoken guy, he kind of had his knee in my chest. And as he got up, he just said, rookie, if you run one more time, I'm going to break your blanket neck.
But the rookie kept his neck intact and kept right on running, even in the face of the eventual Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys.
They had great players. I was kind of a Cowboy fan. I was trying not to be in awe. It was, again, though, where we got some breaks that day, and they made some mistakes, and we cashed in, and I was able to run a couple of touchdowns. But no, it was really a fun win because we'd really beat the established team. They were solid and had lots of great players. Cliff Harris, who was a free safety for the Cowboys. Cliff and I got to be very good friends. One thing I remember him saying about that game is how Coach Landry, he said afterwards, throughout the week, tell him, I can't believe y'all let a rookie quarterback beat you.
Against Dallas, Manning again scored a critical touchdown late in the game. The victory further fired Saints fans whose hero was making it look easy.
I didn't think it was going to be easy, but I thought it was going to be a little easier than it was the next 10 or 12 years. It's kind of sad to say. I'm not, I think that started some really high expectations.
Expectations were high, but the Saints were not ready for primetime just yet. New Orleans went 17 years before beating Dallas again and suffered 15 more years of losing records before enjoying a winning season. And Archie Manning's credibility sank with the Saints. But from that first season, St. Archie was truly possessed of magical skills, and many believe that dealt a different hand, Archie Manning would be remembered as a winner.
Archie, I would have to say, in a nutshell, never had a fair shot because of circumstance. Staubach said that he thought Archie would have been one of the top quarterbacks had he gotten with the right team. And it's one of those things that it just never happened.
In fact, if Archie would end up in Dallas and I would have been in New Orleans, who knows what would have happened? It wouldn't have been good for me. It was just a luck of the draw for Archie. Archie's a great football player, and had he gone with a team like the Raiders or in Pittsburgh or whatever, they'd be talking about Archie Manning right now as one of the great quarterbacks of all time.
Everybody can't win championships and play in Super Bowls, but everybody can't be a starting quarterback in the league and play for 14 years. And I don't feel like anybody dealt me bad cards or anything. I really, as a kid, wanted to play the game and got to play it, so I'm glad I did.
Distant Replay is brought to you by Dodge. The more things change, the more things look like the new Dodge.
Ron Jaworski, put a postscript on Archie Manning. You were on teams that played against Archie. What did the defenses say about him when they came back to the sideline?
Well, Mike, I can remember being with the Rams in 73, 74, 75, and 76, and that Ram defense is one of the best of all time with Merlin Olsen and Jack Youngblood and Freddie Dryer and Larry Brooks. And I'd say they used to pound the heck out of Archie, and they'd come back to the sideline and keep saying, that is the toughest guy we've ever had to play against. I had to watch that twice a year, but it taught me something. That to play in the NFL, at the quarterback position, you've got to be tough, and Archie certainly was.
And he's got a tough guy in his son. Peyton is now will be a sophomore quarterback at the University of Tennessee. Getting close. And a very normal year since the merger. The Niners, Cowboys, and Vikings have won the most division titles.